All right, we're back here with Isabelle Wong. She is the student leadership president for the College Station High School Orchestra and various other clubs as well. She does a lot of leadership here on campus. And we're going to be talking about how to set up an activity. So you've got your group started and you're going to be setting up some kind of activity or social event for the first time with your group. So let's say that we're going to plan a movie night or something like that. So how do we get started?
Typically, for our student leadership meetings, we would come up with what we wanted to do. So say, like you said, let's do a movie night. Then we would look at the next couple of dates that would be good for this certain event. We'd give maybe like 3 or 4 dates and be like, hey, which one looks like the best date for people? Obviously, not all of them are going to work. Some people will be like, oh, well, I have this and I have this. And ultimately, it just came down to a vote for what the best date was. So that was the first step, making sure we had the date in mind. The second was just going through what specific activities we wanted. Like, do we want to serve dinner or do we not want to serve dinner? Like, what kind of, do people need to pay for tickets or do we need to raise money for that? Usually it would be with the officers first. They'd be like, hey, let's do some kind of, social activities event. And then we'd all agree. And then we take it to the rest of student leadership at a meeting to be able to talk more about it.
Dealing with a small group of people first,
Yes.
just to kind of lay the foundation is probably beneficial.
Yeah.
Now, how far in advance should you be thinking for like a movie night or a lock-in?
We usually gave about 3 to 5 weeks, so about a month typically, just because people in orchestra had like very busy schedules. So just being able to schedule that in advance.
3 to 5 weeks in advance, pick a date, make sure the facilities are available.
Yes.
And then as you're getting closer, you can make changes and stuff as you need to. So food can be pretty simple. You can order pizza. We do that a lot. Students can take their own food. Don't have to have food.
Yeah.
So what are some of the considerations with food, though?
We do have a lot of people in orchestra who have allergies, so we were very sure every time we had food, be like, hey, don't bring any of these like foods and like the peanuts, like tree nuts, stuff like that. And we had like hand sanitizer, and we just made people very aware of this. And we did a potluck event last year, and I told people to like write down the name of their dish like in there. And for most people who have food allergies, they would go and ask like, hey, what does this dish have, before they tried it. So that was one of the considerations. And then we did have a couple of vegetarians in orchestra. We usually had some kind of vegetarian option for them. Or some of them just like brought their own food. So it really just came down to people's own preferences.
We try to work with people the best we can if they have dietary restrictions.
Yes.
Allergies, of course, are going to be your priority. Like for when we did that dessert thing, like the rule was like no nuts at all, just because we didn't want to leave anything to chance. For the potluck, did we have anybody bring nuts to that? I can't remember.
I don't think we did. It was weird. I think they did pretty good on that.
So I think like some people, their allergies are so bad, even if they're in the same room with the allergen, they can have anaphylaxis if it goes airborne somehow. I'm not really sure how it works, but I do know that from the nurse's office, they say like this has got to be a nut-free classroom or something. Like even if something's cooked in peanut oil, like we can't have this in the classroom at all. So yeah, I think that the safest bet's probably like avoid the major allergens of like tree nuts, dairy, or wheat flour or something. Make sure to label those. Seafood, shellfish, people tend to have allergies towards those.
Yeah.
What's the other thing that everybody's allergic to?
Eggs.
Eggs, yeah. Label those and you should be all right. Okay, so you're leading up to the event.
Yes.
You know when it's going to be. Whether it's going to be food or not, some kind of centerpiece thing, like it's going to be a movie or it's going to be karaoke night or whatever. And then I guess like how do you plan the rest of it out? Like how do you put in the rest of the pieces and who does that?
We, in our student leadership group, we have a social activities chair, And that officer is typically responsible for, designing like maybe the invitation event and giving it to the social media chair to post, planning the activities that they want, or the most important one we usually had was bringing up to student leadership, hey, these are the ideas we have. Do we like this? Do we not like this? Just so the officer has time to prepare for those set activities. Sometimes if like the social activities chair wasn't able to do it, I as the president would step in and help with some of those. But ultimately it did come down to the responsibility of the social activities chair.
Have you ever had to like veto an activity? Something came up and you're like, nah, we're not going to do that?
Yes.
So how did that work?
Some ideas, they're good, but they're not good to carry out, So typically for our lock-ins, we want people to be as safe as possible. So a couple years ago, we did like a Nerf gun war, which was cool, except now we had the bullets all over the school and there was a lot of running and it was very chaotic. So when they asked again about that this year, I was like, yeah, maybe not, just because one, we have to go up and clean all of that, right? And at the end of the night, no one really wants to go and pick up all of it. So that was one of the things. Some other ones were just like restrictions on safety, pretty much just like, hey, this might not be like the best option, there's too many people, or, we're not in a good like space to be able to conduct that. Like dodgeball specifically, good in a gym, not great in the orchestra room, so stuff like that.
So our campus is kind of like an open floor plan kind of thing, and that makes it really hard to restrict people to certain designated areas. And so you should probably say like, okay, we're going to be in the cafeteria, like we're going to be in the commons or wherever, like have like a inbounds, out of bounds thing, and try not to have students go off. I find that like the more locations that you're in simultaneously, the harder it is to supervise and manage stuff, and then stuff can go wrong when that happens. Communication. How do we get this information out? And what should be included in this information so that we don't get 10 million emails back saying like, oh, well, what about this and what about that?
So typically, again, like the 3 to 5 weeks before the event, we would have all of it compiled, and the social media chair would make a post for it. So it would feature like the theme, what time it was, where it was, like what to wear, things to bring, stuff like that. So for us, the social media post was probably the biggest thing. And then again on Schoology, people were pretty excited about lock-ins or social events. So these were easier to like get people to come to versus like something like the string drive. People were not thrilled to come help with that, but for lock-ins they were like, oh my gosh, there's food and I get to see my friends, so they're more likely to be excited about that kind of stuff. So I would say communication for that is usually pretty good.
Probably the director should send a general email out to parents as well, just to make sure that try to reach people as much as possible. Otherwise you get these emails back like, what's this about a movie night? And it's like, well, it's in the announcements, it's on our Facebook page, so it'd be good to like, unless you like getting lots of emails from parents, it'd be good to like send out some direct communication to them first. How often should these social activities take place? Like how much is too much and how much is not enough?
We usually did one once every 2 to 3 months, and I thought that was pretty good. Time kind of flies throughout the year, so you blink and it's like, oh my gosh, the year's like almost over, So I think, again, I would shoot for maybe 2 a semester. That seems like a pretty good amount, just because there's so much going on with other people's lives. And, these lock-ins are not the only things that like a student leadership group can put on. So I would say, 2 a semester is pretty good.
Okay. In May, it seems like we had something just about every night.
Yes, literally every night at the school.
But people kept showing up,
Yeah.
What about outside of campus if you want to do like a bowling night or a pool party or something like that?
Yeah.
How is that different than hosting something at the school?
Yeah. Obviously, like if you want to do something at an outside location, like paying for that said venue is like not a thing. Like at the school, it's like, hey, we can use like the commons for free or the cafeteria for free. But if you want to do something like the bowling night or the pool party night, you'll have to figure out like those funds or what those groups' like rules are. You know, like the rules there are not going to be the same as the rules here at school. So I would also say like being in communication with those like managers, like, hey, what dates do you guys have open? Like, is there a set amount of people that can come? Like, what are the rules? Stuff like that is really important to work out. And I would say it's probably the role of like the president or the vice president to go and figure that information out and bring it back to the officers before any decisions are made. Because if just one person goes out and gets all the information for it and books it, and then everyone's like, wait, we don't want to do that. That's like, you know, really unfortunate. It's kind of a waste of time. So just making sure everyone's on board with what you're planning to do is really important. I remember we had a bowling party in 5th grade for orchestra, you know, and then we had a pool party this year. So obviously people are going to remember these kinds of events, you know. So I think it's just important for student leadership to look back and be like, hey, what is our intention with these specific events and how do we plan to carry them out?
Is there going to be a deposit required?
Yes.
Is there going to be a discount for school groups? You know, like those are good questions to ask too. And then, like you said, like if you end up having to pay the deposit and you signed a contract and all this stuff, and then you bail because it was a unilateral decision, that could create problems later. Like you could lose money, you could lose, you know, your reputation in the community. So that's probably not a good thing either. In the next segment, we're going to talk about how to run a meeting. Trying to get you out the door as soon as possible and not waste a lot of time. So we'll see you then.